The day after our wedding, I woke up to silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that presses in on you, heavy and wrong. Julia was gone. Not out getting coffee, not at the store, just gone. No note, no calls. Her side of the bed still indented, the ring box open on the dresser. My phone buzzed, notification from my bank. Multiple withdrawals detected, suspicious activity flagged. By the time I pulled up my accounts, it was too late. 3 savings accounts wiped, my father's gold coin, passed down 3 generations, gone from the safe. It wasn't just theft, it was annihilation. I stared at the blank screen, then at the photo of us still open on my laptop, smiling on a beach 2 weeks earlier. My stomach turned. That night, I went to the police. Marital property dispute, the officer said, barely looking up. You gave her access. Not much we can do unless you can prove intent before marriage. Intent? She memorized my social security number by week 2, talked about children by month 3. We eloped 6 months in. The only mistake I made was believing she loved me. Everyone told me to let it go. She'll vanish. These people don't stick around long. You're lucky she didn't take more. Just move on. But they didn't understand. It wasn't about the money, not even the coin. It was what she made me believe, that after years of feeling broken, I'd finally found someone who saw me whole. I didn't move on, I started looking. She wasn't a ghost, she was a pattern. I found a man in Oregon, similar story, different name, Jasmine. Vanished 2 months after marrying him. Then a woman in Georgia, Emily. Same voice, same eyes, same smile. Gone. She wasn't just a con, she was a system, a virus. Every new name traced back to false IDs, burner phones, fabricated social media. But I learned, I watched, I waited, and I remembered who I was before her. Before the therapy, before the soft words and warm hands. I was a soldier. Patience wasn't new to me. Neither was strategy. I built a case, online breadcrumbs, financial inconsistencies, crypto transfers, voicemail snippets. Then I found the lead that cracked her open, a private Instagram buried under layers of fake accounts. A photo of her in Arizona, tagged by someone else. New city, new man, new last name. This time she was Claire. I drove 900 miles overnight. I found her at an art gallery. She didn't see me. She was laughing, arm hooked through a man's. Wealthy, from the looks of it. Trusting, from the way he leaned toward her. I didn't approach. I observed. Over the next 2 days, I followed, not to hurt her, to document her. Every alias, every transaction, every lie. I hired a journalist friend, Sophie, someone I knew from my time in Veterans Outreach. She'd done exposés on domestic financial abuse. We set a trap. Under a false name, I requested a private meeting with Claire, about a potential charity investment. She bit. We met at a hotel lounge in Scottsdale. She walked in like she owned the world. Black dress, red nails, soft laugh. She didn't recognize me, not until I said her real name, Julia. Her face didn't change, but her eyes locked. I think you're mistaken. I'm not. I slid a folder across the table. She didn't touch it. Inside, photos, printouts, screenshots, a thumb drive. She stared. Is this blackmail? No, I said calmly. It's evidence, and it's already in the hands of someone who's ready to go public. A pause. You won't win, she whispered. People like me, we always land on our feet. Maybe, I said, but this time you'll land alone. She stood up and walked out. Fast. I didn't follow. I didn't need to, because this time I wasn't chasing her. I was dragging the truth out into the open. 2 days after that meeting, the video was live. No narration, no dramatics, just facts. Clips of her aliases, bank statements from 3 men, a voicemail where she admitted to restarting in new cities. One short sentence she didn't know I recorded. They never see it coming, I make sure of that. Sophie posted it under her investigation series, The Bride Vanishes. It didn't take long. Shares, comments, interviews. People who had buried their shame suddenly had a voice. Women.men. One guy sent a photo of Julia, back when she called herself Holly. Another, a receipt for a wedding ring he'd never gotten back. Julia went silent. For 3 days, her social media died. Then the denial came. This is harassment. These are deepfakes. I'm the victim of obsessive stalking. It backfired because too many people knew the truth now, and I was just getting started. I contacted the man she was currently living with, Daniel Wolfe, investment broker, mid-40s, divorced, 2 kids. He didn't answer the first time. The second, he hung up. The third, he listened. 5 minutes into the call, he went quiet, then asked if we could meet. We sat in a car outside his office building. I showed him the footage, the documents, the pattern. He didn't speak for a long time, just kept staring at the screen like he wanted it to glitch, to turn into something else. She told me she had no family, that her husband died overseas, he said quietly. We were planning to move to Denver next month. She planned to disappear again, I replied. She's done it before, she would have done it again. Daniel nodded once, then opened his glove compartment and handed me a folded legal document. Prenup? I asked. No, he said. A power of attorney form she asked me to sign last week. 3 more people came forward within the week, a retired teacher, a real estate agent, a man who'd sold his home to start fresh with her. I compiled it all, gave it to Sophie. She took it further, filed a formal complaint through an advocacy org. That triggered the legal process, but the law moves slow. She was still out there, still smiling at strangers like they were opportunity, still rewriting her story. So I did something else. I called her, no disguises, no pretending, she answered. You shouldn't be contacting me, she snapped. I'm not contacting you, I'm warning you. A pause. Of what? You're not untouchable anymore, and soon you're going to run out of people who don't know your name. Click. She didn't call back, but she didn't vanish either. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Daniel. Check your inbox, he said. The email had no subject, just an attachment. A security camera clip from his house. Julia screaming at someone on the phone, her face contorted. Not sad, not afraid, angry. You told me he was a nobody, she shouted. You said he wouldn't do anything. Then silence, her breathing heavy. She looked directly at the camera for a second, then pulled the battery out. That night, she packed her things and left. Daniel followed her in his car, staying 3 cars back, until she stopped at a storage unit on the edge of town. He waited until she left, then called me. You want to see what's inside? He asked. We opened the unit together. Nothing illegal, nothing flashy, but it was all carefully boxed. Documents, phones, photos. A binder full of IDs. Every name she'd used, printed and stored, and in a velvet pouch at the bottom of the last box, my father's coin. It sat in my hand like it remembered the years that had passed, like it knew where it had been. For the first time in months, I felt still. I didn't take anything else. Daniel took the files, turned them in. The local DA opened an investigation. Sophie's story made national news. Julia, real name Amelia J. Carter, was officially listed as a suspect in a multi-state fraud operation. She went on the run, but this time people were looking. 3 weeks passed, then I got another call, this time from a number I didn't recognize. Michael? It was her. Her voice was different now, flat, stripped of pretense. They'll arrest me. You earned that, I said. I wasn't always like this. Neither was I. A beat, then quietly. You wanted to ruin me. No, I said. I wanted to stop you. There's a difference. Another pause. I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. Some people want forgiveness, others want release. She was looking for a way to escape consequences. I wasn't going to give it to her. You said you make sure they never see it coming, I said, calm. She didn't answer. Then, Click. That was the last time I ever heard her voice. I kept the coin. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted peace, and I'd earned it. 3 months passed. No new sightings. No new names. Amelia Carter, Julia, Claire, Holly was off the grid, but her story wasn't. The investigation picked up traction. Sophie's coverage had gone national. People were still coming forward. The pattern was undeniable. But something else had changed. People stopped asking why I hadn't walked away. They started asking how I stayed. One morning, a package arrived at Sophie's office. No return address, no note. Inside, a flash drive and a phone with one number in the call log. Mine. The footage was low quality. A shaky video, maybe hidden in a purse or jacket. Amelia in a cafe, talking to a man across the table. Same tone, same game, but this time her voice cracked in the middle of her pitch. "I don't want to do this forever," she whispered. "I'm tired." It didn't sound like guilt, it sounded like erosion, like the act was starting to wear thin. The man nodded, but said nothing. The video ended there. We traced the cafe, Nashville. Sophie alerted the local police, but Amelia was already gone. She never stayed long once her rhythm broke. I started sleeping better, not because she was caught, but because I wasn't holding my breath anymore. Justice is rarely quick, and it's never clean, but sometimes it's enough to know someone is watching. Sometimes knowing you're not invisible anymore changes everything. Then came the hearing. It wasn't about her, it was about her pattern. Daniel and I testified, so did 2 others. The court reviewed the evidence, the financial records, the fake names, the forged signatures, the patterns of power and disappearance. The term used was emotional and financial coercion across state lines. A rare case, but not unprecedented. The judge didn't make dramatic statements, just handed down a decision that allowed the investigation to proceed federally. Warrants would follow, her face would appear in official databases. Real ones this time. That changed the game. A week later, I was at a gas station outside Phoenix when a woman approached me. Late 30s, tired eyes, holding her phone like a lifeline. "You're Michael, right?" I nodded. She looked like she wasn't sure whether to speak or run. I saw the story. She did the same thing to my brother in 22. He didn't survive it. I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't need to. She held up her phone. A picture. Amelia again, different name, same eyes. "Thank you," the woman said, "for not letting her keep going." Then she turned and walked away. I stood there for a long time. You don't always know what your actions are worth until someone else tells you what they would have paid to have done them first. It stuck with me that every time I thought I was alone in this, someone else had already been living the same silence. Months passed. The story faded from the headlines. People moved on, but the system didn't forget. Last I heard, Amelia had been spotted in Nevada under another new name. She tried to open a joint account with an elderly man who recognized her from an online article. He called the bank manager. They stalled her until police arrived. She ran, again. She always did. But this time, the trail was public. This time, people knew what to look for. I didn't follow, because this wasn't about chasing her anymore. It was about building something she couldn't erase. I joined a legal non-profit as a consultant, helping victims of financial abuse navigate their rights, started speaking at advocacy forums, wrote a guide with Sophie on how to spot coercive financial patterns in relationships, not glamorous, not loud, but it mattered. One woman told me my story helped her get out of a controlling marriage, said hearing a man speak about this kind of betrayal gave her permission to stop feeling ashamed. I don't think I'll forget that. A year later, I visited my father's grave. The coin was still with me, worn now, a little dulled from being carried too long. I didn't say anything dramatic, just stood there and thought about everything I hadn't been able to say back then, that I thought strength meant silence, that I thought love meant surrender, that I thought walking away made me the failure. I know better now. I still get messages sometimes. Was this her? I think I met someone like her. Thank you for speaking. And I answer when I can, not because I need to stay in it, but because they do. And sometimes someone just needs a witness who made it through. The last message I got wasn't from a stranger, it was from Daniel. His daughter had asked him what happened to the woman from before. He said she was a lesson. The kid didn't ask more, that was enough. There's no clean line between before and after, no exact moment when you stop hurting. But there is a point where you stop letting someone else's damage shape your identity. For me, that moment didn't come in a courtroom. It came in a quiet decision to stop chasing fire and start planting roots. Some scars don't close, but they stop bleeding, and sometimes peace doesn't arrive with fanfare. It shows up on a Tuesday and stays. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the email landed in my inbox. No subject line, just a zip file, password protected. I hesitated. The sender wasn't familiar, but something in my gut said this wasn't spam. I ran the file in a sandbox, checked the metadata. It came from a prepaid IP in Reno, Nevada. Inside the zip was a video, her Amelia. She was sitting in the passenger seat of a parked car, filming herself on a phone propped against the dash. I don't know who will see this, she began, but I'm tired. Her voice was low, not shaky, measured, like she'd rehearsed this. I know what I've done. I know who I am when the mask slips. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect understanding. She looked away for a moment, then back. But if you're watching this, I guess I just didn't want to disappear without someone knowing I tried to explain. The video cut there. No confession, no address, just a timestamp. Yesterday, I didn't show it to Sophie. I didn't call the police. I didn't even reply. I just sat there. Because what do you do when someone who destroyed you suddenly asks to be remembered? I wasn't interested in her apology. That's not why I did any of this. I didn't want her regret. I wanted her consequences. And yet, a part of me felt something shift. Not sympathy, not pity, just the quiet realization that her power wasn't what it used to be. She was no longer ahead of the story, no longer in control of what was remembered or erased. This was no longer her narrative, it was mine. Later that week, I spoke at a seminar for financial abuse survivors. It was a quiet crowd, mostly older adults, a few social workers, some lawyers. At the end, a man in his 60s raised his hand. What happens when justice doesn't come? I didn't respond right away. Because that's the question, isn't it? I used to think justice looked like punishment, I finally said. Courtrooms, headlines, handcuffs. But now I think sometimes justice is surviving, with your name, your story, and your sense of self still intact. He nodded. So did a few others. It wasn't a satisfying answer, but it was true. Then came the news. A woman had been detained outside Elko, Nevada. Fake ID, outstanding warrants. Known aliases matched Amelia's records. Her car matched the registration from Daniel's report. But the system took its time. Formal charges were pending, extradition in process. She wasn't behind bars, just in legal limbo. Still, the silence that followed felt different. Not like waiting, like exhaling. I drove out there a few days later. I didn't know why. Curiosity, maybe. Maybe something else. They wouldn't let me see her, of course. I wasn't family. Not a victim of record in that jurisdiction, just a name in a file. But I didn't go to see her. I went to make peace with what I thought I needed to feel okay. And it turns out I didn't need much. No confrontation, no last words. Just the fact that she wasn't vanishing again. That was enough. Back home, life resumed. My job shifted toward training outreach volunteers. I still kept my coin in a drawer, not as a reminder of her, but of what I'd reclaimed. Trust in my instincts, trust in my silence. People sometimes ask if I ever regret going after her. I don't, because going after her wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming reality. One day I got a letter. Real paper, no return address. Inside, a short handwritten note. I read the article. You're not the version I remember, maybe you never were, but I hope you know I remember you now, I mean that. It wasn't signed, but I knew, and it didn't matter what she meant by it. She was still trying to write herself into the ending, but that ending was already written. By me. I tore the note in half, not out of anger, just because some things don't belong in your house once they've been removed from your life. One of the last conversations I had with Sophie before she moved out of state was about the nature of healing. She said something that stuck. We don't all get justice, but we all get to choose what we carry. I chose not to carry her, not her lies, not her voice, not her version, just the truth, just the lesson. Sometimes the ending isn't an explosion, it's a decision. It's choosing not to check the case updates anymore, not to revisit the recordings, not to Google the names, not to carry the weight of someone else's destruction when you've already rebuilt from the rubble. Amelia might never serve a full sentence. She might find another name, another path, another way to slip through cracks. But that's no longer my story. She doesn't get to be the main character in my life anymore. I stopped chasing closure the day I realized I could live without it. And that's when I was finally free. The message came late. No name, no greeting, just, I think it happened to my brother too. Can we talk? It wasn't the first time someone reached out. Since Sophie's article, I'd received over 100 emails, some long and frantic, others brief like this one. Just a flicker of hope that maybe someone, somewhere, would understand. But this one felt different. He didn't ask for advice. He wasn't venting. He was asking to be heard. I called the number. A man answered. Jake, he said. My name's Jake. He sounded young, maybe late 20s. Tight voice, controlled, but with something straining underneath. He got right to it. My brother Logan met her about a year ago in Sacramento. She went by Marla. Said she was in recovery, trying to rebuild. He fell for her fast, sold his truck to move in together, gave her access to everything. The story was familiar, the pacing, the setup, even the phrasing, but it was what came next that hit me. One morning, he found his accounts empty. She was gone. Same day, he called me. Sounded confused, ashamed, said it was his fault, said he should have known better. Jake's voice cracked there. He took his own life a week later. Silence, not the kind that waits, the kind that settles. I found your article months later, he added. I didn't think anyone would believe me if I told them what she did, but reading it, I knew it was her. I didn't interrupt, just listened. I'm not calling for closure, Jake continued. I know there's no such thing, but people still talk about her like a rumor, like she's just a manipulator, not a predator. I need people to understand. Logan wasn't stupid, he was just open. That line stayed with me long after we ended the call. He was just open. Over the next week, I helped Jake organize what he had, texts, transaction records, messages Logan had sent. We logged everything, marked the overlaps. There were many. It was clear Amelia had been with Logan during one of her off-grid periods, just before she resurfaced in Nevada. Jake didn't want revenge. He didn't even care if charges were filed. He just wanted Logan's name remembered for more than how it ended. I asked if he wanted to write about it. He said no. I don't want to relive it. I just want people to know he existed, I told Sophie. We added Logan's story to the public timeline. No photo, no deep dive, just a name, a location, and a single sentence from Jake. He believed people could be good, and she used that like a weapon. The post went viral. Comments poured in. He sounds like my son. I was almost him. She nearly broke me too. We didn't need to frame him as a symbol. He was a person. That was enough. Months passed. Then I got another message. This one wasn't anonymous. It was from a woman named Tara. She'd gone on a few dates with a woman named Elise. Something hadn't felt right. Elise didn't like being asked questions, always redirected the conversation, said things like, "You trust too quickly," or "People lie when they're afraid of love." Tara saw a video online, recognized the face. She ended things the next day. "Just wanted you to know," she wrote. "I walked away because of what you shared. You saved someone you've never met." I didn't save anyone, I just stopped pretending it wasn't real, but I replied anyway. "Thanks for walking away, that's the part that matters." One morning, Jake sent me a photo. It was Logan, sitting on the edge of a dock, holding a cup of coffee, looking out over a lake. Simple, quiet, peaceful, no filter, no caption. But in the image, you could see who Logan was, someone who made space in the world, not noise. Jake told me he was printing the picture for a small memorial, a community bench facing the lake. He added one line under his brother's name. He gave people the benefit of the doubt. He just didn't know some people trade that in for control. There was a time I thought justice meant making Amelia face what she'd done. Now I think justice sometimes means telling the truth loud enough that no one like her gets to rewrite it again. We still don't know where she is. She missed her last court appearance. The warrant stands. But the world moves on, even when people like her try to stay ahead of the wreckage. I don't follow anymore, because she isn't the center of this story now. Logan is, Jake is. Everyone who spoke up is. When people ask me how it ends, I tell them this: it doesn't end. It keeps unfolding every time someone recognizes the pattern and walks away. Every time someone stops blaming themselves. Every time a brother stands up and says, "My sibling mattered, my sibling was good." That's the closure, not from courts, from each other. I still have the coin, still carry it when I speak, not as a symbol of pain, but proof that even things we thought were lost forever can be recovered, held, passed on. Not as reminders of who broke us, but of who we became after. And that's what this story became. Not about her, not even about me, but about what happens when someone finally says, "Enough." A year later, I spoke at a community college. The room was small, no cameras, no press, just a handful of students in folding chairs, most of them looking like they were here for extra credit. I wasn't sure they'd listen, but I told the story anyway. Not every detail, just the outline, the woman, the fraud, the silence, the cost. When I finished, no one clapped, no one asked questions, except one girl in the back. She raised her hand slowly and said, "How do you trust anyone after that?" The room went still, and for a second I thought about lying, giving her something polished. Instead, I told the truth. "You don't trust people blindly," I said. "You trust your own instincts first." That's what she tried to take from me, not the money, not the coin, my sense of what's real. I had to take that back, and you can too. She nodded. I think she understood more than she let on. Not long after that, I was asked to consult on a local training program, detecting patterns of financial manipulation in relationships. They gave me a packet. I flipped through it. Charts, definitions, warning signs. Page 7 had a checklist. Does the person ask you to keep the relationship secret? Do they move quickly toward financial entanglement? Do you feel guilty for asking basic questions? I helped rewrite that section, not to make it smarter, to make it real. Because the people who manipulate don't come in flashing red lights. They come softly, with charm, with borrowed trauma, with just enough truth to make the lie stick. So I added this line: if something feels off, even if you can't prove it, listen, that's your nervous system doing its job. Sophie eventually moved out of state. We still talk. Not often, but when we do, it's never small talk. She sent me a message last month. "You gave them a story they didn't know they were allowed to tell." I saved it. Not out of pride, but because there were years where I wasn't sure I was allowed to speak at all. Jake and I keep in touch too. He told me the bench for Logan is finished. Simple plaque, lakeside, no dates, just one line. He trusted, and that was never a weakness. I drove out there once, sat beside it for 20 minutes without saying a word. You don't need to talk to feel the weight of someone's absence, you just need to remember them as more than how they left. Amelia was officially indicted 6 months ago. Wire fraud, identity theft, emotional coercion. The charges didn't come from me. They came from the man she tried to scam in Arizona after Nevada. A retired school principal. He filed everything. Didn't flinch once. She's awaiting trial. No bail. It made the news again, only briefly, and I didn't watch. I already know what happened. The system caught up to her, but by then she no longer defined me. Sometimes I speak at high schools now, not to tell horror stories, to teach pattern recognition, boundaries, how to say no without guilt, how to leave without apology. One kid stayed after class once, asked if it was hard to forgive her. I told him I didn't. Not because I'm angry, because forgiveness implies she still takes up space in my life. She doesn't. I've learned that survival doesn't always look like strength. Sometimes it looks like quiet decisions. Not answering the call, not reopening the folder, not trying to make someone sorry who never will be. Sometimes it's just choosing not to carry their damage as your identity. One morning, I visited my mother. She made coffee and sat across from me, no questions. She still keeps the coin in a small glass case by the window. She says it reminds her that things passed down can be reclaimed. Not everything gets lost forever. If you'd asked me 2 years ago what I wanted most, I would have said justice. Now I want recognition for every man, woman, and kid who questioned their own sanity because someone else convinced them love had to hurt, had to cost, had to mean giving away pieces of yourself without getting anything back. I want them to know the truth. You can lose everything and still be whole. People still ask why I keep telling the story. Isn't it over? No, because every time someone hears it and sees themselves in it, it becomes more than just mine. It becomes a mirror, a warning, a way out. That's why I keep telling it, because silence protected her. Now truth protects us. I don't know where Amelia is today, and I don't care. I know where I am, still standing, still telling, still here. The news broke quietly. Amelia had accepted a plea deal, 5 years, suspended sentence, mandatory restitution, no prison time, community service, therapy, and a lifetime ban from holding power of attorney or opening financial accounts under another name. It wasn't the sentence I imagined. It wasn't satisfying, but it was public, it was official, and that mattered more than I expected. People asked how I felt. I told them the truth, relieved, not for me. For the ones still wondering if they'd imagined everything, now there was a legal record that said, no, you didn't. It happened. She did it. And even if the consequences weren't enough, the acknowledgement existed. That alone was a crack in the silence wide enough for others to follow. One of the women Amelia had targeted reached out months later. She'd testified during the final phase. Briefly, anonymously, but enough. Her name was Janice. Middle-aged, quiet strength. She didn't want attention, but she wanted me to know one thing. She didn't just take money from me. She took the version of myself I was finally starting to like. Then she paused. But your story made me realize I can get that version back, maybe not the same, but close enough to feel real again. That's what I've come to understand. Justice doesn't restore you to what you were before. It gives you the right to start again. I was invited to speak at a national policy forum last spring. The theme was Invisible Abuse. I stood on a stage, facing rows of people who wrote the laws that people like me had to live under. Their suits were expensive, their pens poised, their expressions careful. I didn't talk about Amelia, I talked about the system, how fraud within emotional relationships is still treated as bad judgment, not manipulation. How men who come forward are labeled bitter, not violated. How grief isn't measured in dollars, but in identity. I ended with this. When someone robs a bank, we don't ask if the vault was too trusting. When someone exploits a person's love, we ask why they gave too much of it. Afterward, 3 lawmakers approached me. 2 thanked me. 1 asked for a copy of my notes. Progress in inches. But I'll take inches over silence. I started writing more after that. Not about her, about the system, about the quiet moments where people realize they're not crazy, not broken, just manipulated by someone who benefited from their doubt. One essay, The Weight of Being Believed, was picked up by a non-profit journal. I started getting invitations, not viral, not fame, but visibility, and that's more powerful than I ever expected. Jake and I presented together once, his first time speaking publicly. He opened with Logan's story. He didn't cry, didn't shake. He just told it exactly the way it happened. When it was over, a woman in the front row stood up and said, "I lost my brother too." Jake sat down next to her. They talked for half an hour. Didn't exchange contact info. Didn't need to. Some grief just wants to be heard, not solved. One night, I got a message from Amelia's former therapist. He didn't break confidentiality. He just said, "I've worked with people like her before. Rarely do they acknowledge what they've done. Even more rarely do they believe it was wrong." Then he added, "But stories like yours, they reach people who are one step before the fall. You've saved more than you'll ever know." I didn't respond. Some messages you don't answer. You just hold them quietly. Today, I live in a smaller town. I work part-time, help advocacy groups remotely, spend weekends hiking or reading, or just being unproductive without guilt. No one here knows my full story unless I choose to tell them. That's how I want it. Not because I'm hiding, because I've earned the right to be more than what was done to me. There's still fear sometimes. Every so often, I see a stranger with a familiar voice or expression, and my body tenses before my brain catches up. But now I recognize it faster, it fades quicker, and it never controls me. I still carry the coin, only now I don't think of what was taken, I think of what remained and what I've built since. To anyone reading this who thinks they're alone, you're not. To the ones who gave someone the benefit of the doubt and were punished for it. That was strength, not stupidity. To the men who were told to get over it, no. You get to grieve, you get to be angry, you get to heal, and you get to speak. Even if your voice shakes, even if no one claps at the end, because the goal was never revenge, it was never even justice. It was this, a life beyond survival, and the proof that healing doesn't need permission. It only needs a decision to begin.